Today, I'm signing an executive order to make our Attorney General, who's a great person, she's going to be a great Attorney General, Pam Bondi, the head of a task force, brand new, to eradicate anti-Christian bias. About time, right? Anti-Christian bias. Yeah, you never heard of that one before, right? But it's about time, isn't it, though, really? So many times you hear, but you don't hear the anti-Christian bias.
Yes, it wasn't just you that found out that there was anti-Christian bias in the world in real time, but Donald Trump also apparently put together and unleashed an entire task force to tackle Christian bias, which he himself knew nothing about before the words came out of his mouth. So Trump yesterday made good on another one of his campaign promises, this creating an anti-Christian bias task force. What would that task force even do? Great question. I'm certain they don't even know, but he said that it was meant to stop all Christian targeting and discrimination in the federal government. Conservatives have long complained that the Biden administration has gone after Christian Americans. Okay, one example that they cite as evidence of that persecution is that there were convictions of anti-abortion activists who blocked the entrances to abortion clinics. This is just what they say. We'll debunk all this in a moment. And they also point to a leaked FBI memo from 2023. Here's what that says, according to The Hill. It detailed growing overlap between white nationalist groups and, quote, radical traditionalist Catholics. Oh, I knew some of those in Catholic school, which it identified as a small minority within the church. Then FBI Director Christopher Wray ordered the memo to be removed, saying it violated the agency's policies on conducting investigations based on religious affiliation. But after a 120-day review of the incident ordered by Congress, this is now from the New York Times, Michael E. Horowitz, the Justice Department's Inspector General, drawing from the FBI report and interviews conducted by his own investigators, found no evidence that, quote, anyone ordered or directed anyone to investigate Catholics because of their religion. Now, Trump also announced a new White House faith office led by Pastor Paula White Cain. Little on the nose of a name, if you ask me. She served as Trump's religious advisor for several years now, to no benefit, I guess. He's still making a lot of sins happen. And Thursday's prayer breakfast, which you can read a ton about on tyt.com/reports, she praised Trump as, quote, the greatest champion of any president to date, quote, of religion, of faith, and of God. Sure. So there's a lot to unpack there. First, JR, what do you think about Trump unleashing this anti-Christian bias task force by, unsealing probably also the seventh seal of hell?
Yeah, a standard, of course, this is the same thing. Very generic talking points that describe nothing, that make assumptions and examples that don't really match up to reality. But the thing is when you deal with lazy politics like this, and you've convinced enough people that no matter what you say, your word is truth, can make things up to even further make them trust you even further by saying, yo, listen, it's about Christians. I wonder, because there's some issues that black folks have in this country. One of them being the things that Donald Trump wants to make worse, like violence against black folks in the streets, police violence specifically. What if there's a pastor who gets hemmed up by the police? What if there's just a black person who's a Christian? There's plenty of us that's just a Christian, and then gets hemmed up, beaten down by the police. Is it Christian violence? I'm sick of the police beating up on Christians in this country. Why are we against Christians in this country? This anti-Christian bias in our law enforcement has to go. But I get the feeling if someone says that, no one's gonna give a damn, because it's probably the wrong kind of Christian that's getting beat up in the streets by police officers. But if Donald Trump says there's a Christian bias based off of, who is it, Paula White? If it's the same woman I think it was that was doing I think she was speaking in tongues at one point during his campaign.
Yes, that is her. I just looked her up. It's the same face of the person who's like, let's put our hands on Trump's back and pray on him, y'all.
And you did the thing that many supporters would never do, which you just said. I looked her up. They don't do that. They just listen to anything that he said.
My God, yes. What's your take on this whole situation?
You know, when I first read this story, I had to think about it for a second. I was like, do I have anti-Christian bias? Am I biased against Christians? And I was like, maybe I should check my own bias. But really what I realized was I'm just biased against people who are biased against other people. And that in a lot of cases happens to be a lot of Christians. If they didn't bother other people so much, no one would have a problem with them, right? If they weren't bothering people, no one would bother them, right? Even though they're bothering people a lot more than the rest of us are trying to bother them anyway. But that's not even the point here. Trump is putting together a whole task force to fight anti-Christian bias, which none of us knew that was even a thing before. I thought they were trying to cut the pork in the government. I thought they were trying to run a more efficient government. This feels rather inefficient. It feels like a waste of money, a waste of resources, and a waste of everyone's damn time. And this is just another thing that Trump is doing to upset people. He knows that he's on a roll and he wants to keep that thing going. And he knows this is insane, but he knows that the Christians and the evangelicals are the people who voted him into office. They're the ones who voted for him. He is throwing them a bone. He's solidifying their support. It's an easy way for him to do this. So many Christians voted for Trump, even when it would have otherwise been out of their best interest to do so, because this is a man who is on the side of Christ. This is what people have told me. I really don't understand it, but that's how they think. That's what they believe. And a lot of Christians, especially on social media, they do have like a persecution kink or something. You know, they have to believe that they're persecuted, that people are going to come after them. And so they need to be protected, I guess. And so it's a very easy way for him to do that for them.
You know, something I've noticed about certain Christians, I love a lot of Christians. I think they're really awesome. I like the people who are like lapsed in their religious affiliations are very interesting. But who knew Christians would have such a martyr complex? Like the religion's main symbol is a torture device to remind you at all times that God's kid was murdered by my people. I went to Catholic school as a Hebrewoid person, and it is so creepy. And all religions, for the most part, have a little bit of guilt to keep you in line. But like the specific strain of Christian guilt is like, look at what you did to your Savior who died for your sins. I feel like the DNA of that runs through it. Now, why can't the winning DNA, the DNA of the religion, the stuff that actually permeates all members of the religion, why can't it be the like, have some humility messages? Why can't it be the love your neighbor messages? Why can't it be the like, honor thy father and mother? Why not? Go old school with it. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. None of that is present in these kinds of people. And then like, guys, the reason that the anti-abortion activists were arrested had nothing to do with the fact that they were Christian. It's that they blocked the entrance to a building. The same way you guys are like, arrest those Black Lives Matter protesters, agnostic of what religion they are. That's what happened when people arrested the Christian protesters outside of the abortion clinics. By the way, like, yes, I absolutely agree. Like, I hope Elon Musk doesn't find out about this. His job is to shrink the size of the government. If Elon finds out for 1 minute, because his priority is not growing power, it's not making the voting populace that ended up turning for Donald Trump, is not placating them with a bunch of stuff as he amasses power and wealth. No, it's not that. It's that he genuinely cares about all this stuff when it comes to Department of Government efficiency. If he finds out that we're not only starting a task force against anti-Christian bias, but that we're also starting the White House Faith Office, they're gonna be furious.
It makes it pretty straightforward. Anybody who gets hemmed up in any kind of point, if you're working for anyone, make sure you call this task force, which is probably gonna be 3 or 4 people that don't do anything. Call them up and tell them, yo, the government is coming for me because I'm a Christian. There's no reason you have to prove it. They're not proving anything. They're just saying things. Listen, this is a big part of their push. Because by the way, there was also mention of the FBI infiltrating this Catholic church to go after someone. By the way, that investigation had everything to do with them finding someone who was following, hitting certain checkpoints and certain characteristics of someone that was planning an attack. There was nothing that had anything to do with his religion. You know, there's this weird thing. Christians can commit crimes. Christians may murder people. It's odd because actually they probably have it in the Bible somewhere. But just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that you can't do bad things. Like they're trying to eliminate this entire thought that if you claim to be a Christian, that you're just untouchable by anybody. So this guy that they were looking for when the FBI went into this church was based off of things he was doing outside of the church. So I think there was someone that befriended him and tried to find out what it was that he was up to. That's how they connected this to being having anything to do with Christianity, or I guess in this case, Catholicism.
Yeah, and I think it is very telling what Brett was talking about, how they had this persecution complex and it's built into the religion, right? Personally, I always thought it was really cool going to Catholic churches because they had all this very gruesome imagery everywhere. It was fun for me because I wasn't Catholic and I wasn't raised in all of that. But there's a reason why all the horror movies are centered around Catholicism because it is so it's entrenched within you, this idea that there is death and there is guilt associated with that death. And, all of that combined with this persecution complex that everyone is out to get you, it's not great. It can't be good for your mental load. I don't know what that's like to grow up with that. But whenever you see on social media, whenever you interact with Christians there, whenever you interact with Christians in real life, I live in Texas, and so I do it a lot. I know a lot of Christians. I know more Christians than I don't know Christians. And yeah, like they're good people. I like them, right? Like the people that I know, I think are good people. So I'm not saying that they're all, quite unhinged, but they do have a different way of seeing the world and they do interpret things differently than, maybe someone who is agnostic or an atheist might look at something. I had a friend and he grew up in like a small sect of Christianity. And he told me that when he was little, he had a little go bag packed and he hid it in his closet just in case the people would come for them and they would have to flee.
Wow.
And I can't imagine what it's like to grow up believing that you're going to have to flee because you will inevitably eventually be persecuted. So that's kind of the mentality that we're working with here. And then whenever you have a person like Trump who's saying, yeah, there is bias against Christians, people don't like you guys, right? Couldn't possibly have anything to do with them because they're perfect. Right? It has to be that everyone else is biased against them because they're being persecuted and it's unfair.
Another thing I love is that, like, let's look at the dynamic. Is they're angry and find it wildly anti-Christian that when studying extremism, they found, quote, radical traditionalist Catholics, and essentially a small group of religious extremists within a billion-plus person religion. They're doing horrible stuff. And if you tie it to the religion, the Christians are like, how dare you? Oh my God, that's so wrong. If you do that with Islam and you point out that there's a small group of radical Islamists or whatever that executes these kinds of crimes, but we shouldn't basically take that and think that way about every person who's a member of a billion-plus person religion. They're like, no, I think we should keep this whole Islamist extremist thing. That's what we should do, 100%, it makes total sense. And yeah, and there was a whole bunch that Jesus talked about that was anti-hypocrisy that these folks just don't listen to.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.